Right now, you are looking at a man in whose hands a phosphorus munition detonated. The poor man's body was burning at a temperature of over 800 degrees Celsius. Nobody believed he would survive, including himself. Yet, despite everything, he managed to do it. The only question is what it cost him, and what did the Z markings on US military equipment have to do with it? Well, you're about to find out. Sit back comfortably, my dears, because this is terrifying. So, the man in this photo is named Henry Irwin. And before his body was scorched by white phosphorus, he looked like this. About Henry's childhood, very little is known. He was born on May 8, 1921, in the city of Adams, Wills, USA, and grew up in a very religious family. By the way, in Irwin's own words, God never let him down whenever he called on him for help. In 1941, in the thick of World War II, the already 20-year-old Irwin joined the Army Reserve. In 1942, the guy never had any desire to pursue a military career in general, but after Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, like many other Americans, Henry's plans changed somewhat. Already in February 1943, he was drafted as an aviation cadet in the U.S. Army Air Forces. There, he underwent training as a radio operator and radio mechanic, and upon completion was assigned to the 52nd Bombardment Squadron, where he served as a gunner radio man. And it must be said he served quite well, up to the moment when phosphorus scorched Henry's body almost all the way through. He had already earned 2 air medals, a military decoration of the U.S. Armed Forces for outstanding service during aerial combat operations. So what could go wrong? You see, there's always something. For Henry, that something happened on April 12, 1945, when he was working as a radio man aboard a Boeing B-29 Superfortress during an attack on a chemical plant in the city of Koriyama. That day, together with him on board, were 11 crew members, and all of them, despite their primary duties, also had secondary tasks. Henry, for example, besides coordinating the actions of the others by radio, also dropped phosphorus grenades through a chute in the floor of the Boeing. Those grenades didn't reach the ground but exploded in the air, creating a powerful smoke signal for other aircraft of the U.S. Armed Forces that were participating in that operation. I'll remind you that the use of phosphorus munitions is a crime against humanity and a violation of the Geneva Conventions of 1949, which of course doesn't stop certain individuals from the East from using them today. But that's a different story. So, Henry would first pull the pin and immediately after that throw the grenade into the special chute from which it would fly downward. Effectively, the guy had about 10 seconds before the chemical reaction with oxygen began and the phosphorus inside the grenade ignited. Quite dangerous, especially considering that in the event of an accident, extinguishing white phosphorus aboard an aircraft would be practically impossible. We'll come back to that in a moment. I need to briefly interrupt the story to share something interesting. Well, firstly, it's me. No Russians around, just coming from the future, everything's fine. Secondly, while searching for video footage for editing this video, I came across this interesting clip about the Boeing B-29. This video was uploaded to YouTube in 2017. Among other things, you simply can't help but notice the Z markings on the American aircraft that were bombing Japan in 1944. Like an analyst? Oh, I was indeed quite surprised. I Googled it and found lots of photos with these same aircraft and those letters on them. However, there isn't much information online about those letters on U.S. military equipment. I showed these frames to my friend who is currently fighting in Bakhmut, and he said he wasn't sure what it means. It's just worth noting that B-29s were also marked with other letters. Either way, I think the information is interesting and I couldn't not share it. I'd love to read your thoughts on this in the comments, especially if you know something about it. All right, let's get back to the main story about Henry Irwin. So Henry was throwing grenade after grenade into the chute until he came across one that was defective, though he didn't know it. The pin of one of the grenades failed and ignited the phosphorus prematurely. not giving those few seconds for Henry to drop the munition into the chute. And then a real nightmare began. Despite the fact that smoke grenades are not considered particularly dangerous since they aren't designed for fragmentation injury, at close contact they can still become so. The temperature of burning white phosphorus, just for a moment, is over 800 degrees Celsius. That's exactly what Henry Irwin felt firsthand. On top of his body, literally burning, the grenade canister hit him in the face with tremendous force, shattering his nose and severing his ear almost completely. In many places, it is written specifically about a phosphorus bomb. However, Henry himself refers to it as a grenade. Perhaps the answer is that it was one of similar grenade models which were also called bombs. Either way, the main point is that Mr. Irwin was completely covered in burning white phosphorus. And that stuff, my dears, once it lands on any surface, will burn until it simply burns itself out. Unless you manage to completely cut off the oxygen, which will stop the burning process. But an ordinary fire extinguisher unfortunately won't do the job here. Plus, let's not forget that the smoke grenade was doing its job efficiently and quickly. The entire fuselage of the aircraft filled with smoke. This was an enormous problem. The pilot couldn't see the instrument panel, nor anything at all, and as a result couldn't properly control the Boeing, which was beginning to rapidly lose altitude. At this moment, despite the unbearable pain, Henry realized something. Well, firstly, that he would likely not survive, and secondly, that the phosphorus could burn through the metal floor and reach the bomb bay, and then not only he, but all his comrades would die. He had to act very quickly. And that's exactly what Irwin did. Completely blinded, he felt around and found the smoke grenade on the floor, picked it up, and began making his way to the cockpit to throw it overboard. But almost immediately, Henry ran into the navigator's fold-down table that was attached to the wall in front of the cockpit. So he took the scorching munition in his bare hand, pressed it to his shoulder, and with his left hand raised the table to pass through. And literally, in those few seconds it took to do that, the phosphorus burned the guy to the bone. The scene was truly hellish, and complete chaos reigned on board, though no one could see it because of the incredible smoke from that smoke grenade. And indeed, nobody fully understood what was happening except Henry himself, who upon reaching the porthole shouted to the co-pilot to open it. Once that was done, Henry immediately threw the grenade overboard, after which he collapsed on the floor without strength but remained conscious. The smoke cleared just in time, when the Boeing was only 100 meters from the water. Fortunately, the pilot was able to pull the massive aircraft out of the dive and bring it back to the required altitude, and only when the crew recovered from the smoke did they all see Irwin, who was still conscious and, I remind you, still on fire. The crew tried to extinguish his clothing, but nothing worked. The only thing they eventually did was give him morphine to ease Henry's condition a little. Henry needed medical attention immediately, or in top grade at that. The B-29, named City of Los Angeles, made an emergency landing on the island of Guam, where Irwin was immediately taken to the local hospital. However, even the doctors were throwing their hands up. Henry's condition was assessed as critical. They said he could simply die at any moment. The crew members approached the command, telling them that each one of them owed their life to Irwin, to Henry Irwin, and he more than anyone deserved the Medal of Honor, which, just for a moment, is the highest decoration one can receive in the U.S. Army. Normally, it takes quite a lot of time to receive it. Reviews, petitions, and all that bureaucratic stuff. On top of that, you can't simply open a cabinet of medals and take one out, because the nearest Medal of Honor to Guam was in Hawaii, and specifically as a display exhibit in a museum. Nevertheless, the crew members did what they could. They pestered everyone there to get this decoration to Henry, their comrade, while he was still alive. And it worked. The official representatives of the Army Air Forces, led by Major General Curtis LeMay, approved Henry Irwin's Medal of Honor award in record time. It was urgently delivered from Hawaii to Guam and presented to him in the local hospital. And besides that, things were genuinely going badly for Henry. And by the time he received his medal, everyone had already said their goodbyes to him. Yet, remarkably, despite everything that had happened to him, despite the bleak prognosis of all the doctors, at some point Henry's condition began to improve. He himself recalls that he simply asked God for that. What's more, after 30 months and 41 plastic surgeries, his eyesight was restored and Henry was even able to use his damaged hand again. In 1947, he was discharged from the Army on disability at the rank of Staff Sergeant, after which he spent another 37 years working with veterans who had been wounded while carrying out combat duties at the local hospital in Birmingham, American Birmingham, not the Peaky Blinders one. Henry Irwin's life ended in 2002 when he was 80 years old. What does the Medal of Honor mean? What it means to you. I'm not saying I am a hero. Freedom is not free. I want to remind you that this channel lives and thrives exclusively thanks to your support. My dears, if you watch this video all the way to this very second, you know you are the best. I appreciate that enormously, incredibly. You are the best. You are the best. You are wonderful. Take care of yourselves and your health. That's very important. You are important. And with you was the unseen witness. See you next week. In the meantime, watch this video or this one.